And welcome back to Legendary NFL Live. I'm your host Frank. I'm joined here by the commissioner Blaine. How you doing, buddy?
Hey Frank, how's it going?
Doing great, my friend.
Good.
We got another season kicking off here. I know there's lots of actions in a lot of other leagues. I know we're about to get things going here in Legendary.
Yep.
What's on tap for us so far, buddy?
Well, the biggest thing we have upcoming, we have RFA. Just to highlight the time frame real quick, the deadline to tender your RFA players is April 18th, so that's right around the corner. And then RFA bidding will open up on April 19th.
Okay.
That's right around the corner. And then along those lines, the reason I wanted to have this tonight is to discuss the rule change that we put in for RFA. Maybe let me explain some of the issues that we were having and why I changed the rule,
Yeah.
if that's okay.
Yep. Go for it, bud.
The previous rule that we had in place was that essentially the team that owns the rights to the player would offer the initial contract offer. So they're setting the baseline market basically, and then other teams would come in and beat that offer.
Yeah.
The issue we were having is a lot of people would mess up on that offer. They wouldn't tender it right, and it was just confusing. And so I took this rule from a different league, and the biggest difference is that you just now we're just offering a tender. Like I want to assign my player a second round tender. And then the bidding team comes in and makes that baseline offer.
Yeah.
The difference of that is that now you have the player going and you actually get to see what his fair market value is because you're going to see what teams want to put an offer on him. So I like the way this system is a lot better and I wanted to try it out. So that's why we made the change. I think it's going to be a lot better for the team that owns the rights because you don't have to figure out a contract. You're just issuing a tender, and then we see what the market value is for that player.
Yeah.
So
Mhm.
um, there was a little bit of controversy because when I copied the rule over, there was a part in it that I didn't realize was there. And to be honest, I don't agree with it, so I took it out. And the part was that you can basically, if a team offers a player a 2-year contract, you can match the offer and then extend to like a 4-year contract,
Okay.
which honest, that doesn't make sense to me. And it's really, I know we have to look out for the player's
Yeah.
value, and that's not fair to the player, right? You could just go and extend their contract.
Yeah. Well,
Um, so
good.
I'm sorry. One more thing. So I took that out because the way it should be is we have the ability to either match the exact contract offer that's given or we take the draft pick compensation.
Right.
So go ahead. I didn't mean to cut you off.
No, no, it's okay. No, this is fascinating because again, a little history on this particular RFA rule. It was my rule that I came up with over at Legacy NFL. Remember, RFA was very, it wasn't good prior to this rule change that I made over there, and most of these leagues have adopted this rule because what we tried to do about 7, 8, 9 years ago, however long it is now, is to take away the voting aspect and judging contracts based upon subjective opinions from other league members. Remember, we used to have to vote whether a contract offer from a team that had his RFA rights after he cleared the RFA process, whether we thought that was a fair value or not. And there was arguments and people hated that. So I came up with a generic system to remove voting from that process, and we came up with generic numbers. Now, granted, when I ran Legacy at that time, I had the baseline prices down on everything. As you know, I talk about the importance of baseline prices on everything. And RFA, while it wasn't perfect, especially with the quarterback position, where there's a discount that happens with this system, but we we have to have one universal system, a baseline, and the quarterback. Listen, if It's like, Dak Prescott. He was, he came in the later rounds about, what is it, 8, 9 years ago, however long it's been now. If you hit
Yeah.
on that third round tender, you're probably going to get a good discount on on Prescott, or take the first or second picks. That's just the nature of it. But for the most part, most of these positions, we've tried to nail down where in $100 million league at the time, where a lot of these prices will come in as a baseline price, something fair, something close, not perfect. Okay. So that's just a little history of how that rule came about. Now everybody has adopted it. Now, the question here is that what do we do with an RFA? And let's say a team comes in there and only offers 2 years or 3 years, and the team has a right to either to match and take that contract or be compensated with the pick. The RFA, as I've always understood it in all these leagues, it's a limited
Excuse me.
protection by the RFA rights team, where they could either match it, because that's what it says. You have a right to match, not extend. I did not put extension. If that's in legacy now, I haven't read it actually. If that's in legacy, I've fallen far behind because I didn't put that rule in legacy. That must be an addition from, whoever runs it now. That's Jesse over there. Maybe he did that. I'm not sure. I don't remember when that happened. But my point is that the rule in all these leagues was you either have a right to match it or take the pick, right? Now I understand everybody wants to protect their players. This is always a big deal in every league, and everybody wants a right to do that. But we also have to understand that RFA isn't exactly a fair market value oftentimes for players. For example, I got Puka Nacua in one league. I'm going to put a first and second round tender on him, and people are going to come in and they'll offer first and a second to Puka to try and take him from me, obviously. But a lot of times, as I've done before, I don't put what I believe are market-based values on a lot of these offers. I'll lowball the offer because I got nothing to lose at the end of the day. And so somebody comes in with a second, if somebody comes in with only a 2 year offer, yeah, that'd be stupid for Puka, don't get me wrong. But there's other players you could do it for. I'm just giving an example. Puka, if you're extending him on a low ball offer, is that fair to the player where in the open market he could receive more money, a player like Puka, if the 2 year offer comes in? Now, I get it. Puka was going to get a 4 year offer. I get that because he's a tremendous player. But I'm just using him as an example. If somebody were to come in with a 2 year offer on a low ball offer, right, with a first and second round tender, does Puka get extended at that low ball offer? I just think that a player has a right to hit the market, and that's why we've always limited either to a match or accept a pick, so the player has a better representation.
Yeah, because like RFA, it's free agency in the way that other teams can bid on your player, but it's really not free agency because the team still has a lot of control.
Yes.
Because regardless of what happens, the team gets something out of it. They either get to match the offer or they get picks. That's where you have the control that the teams have, for owning the rights to that player. And I think my personal opinion is that's enough control. And if I'm not mistaken, that's how the NFL does it too. I don't think you can extend a contract. I think you could just match it.
Yeah.
You can match the offer. So, which is what we want to do. We want to try to be in line with the NFL, as
Yeah.
much as we can. And so,
I
ultimately,
yeah.
that's
I
what.
I I think
Go
the
ahead.
point is here is allows for free extensions is what it does. And so, and I know it's not very common where there's, 1 year offers, 2 year offers, especially in the bigger players. But
Yeah,
the fact is that we have extension in these leagues as it is already. And if you allow, uh, again, unlimited extensions in RFA, well, that's interesting in and of itself. I know in one league, I mean, I have 8 or 9 RFAs this year. I'm just saying, I know this is not going to happen. But if everybody comes in at 1 and 2 years offers, do I get 9 extensions at the end of the day? I mean, that's effectively what it is. And so,
yeah. I mean, honestly, if you allow that, you may as well just get rid of RFA and like add an extra extension or
yeah,
something.
exactly. Yeah, exactly. Just add extensions. Add one or two more or three more or four more. That's the point. And again, the game we play, again, is supposed to represent what the NFL does as best we can. It will never
Yeah,
be identical because it is different in nature, but it's supposed to be a challenge in many ways, and And so for those GMs that have drafted and have drafted well and they got a valuable, a valuable piece with an RFA tag, they got some control over that. But again, they don't got complete control over it because the player deserves representation.
Yeah.
Let's say, for example, and this has happened, right? Let's say, for example, Puka Nacua, first and second, somebody comes in for whatever reason, and let's say his market value in a $100 million league is 15 million. Somebody comes in and says, "Oh, I'll do 10.5 million." Well, you've just set up that GM not only to match that offer, but to extend that player at a ridiculous low rate for additional 2 years. And now this GM has got Puka Nacua, had him on a rookie contract on a ridiculously cheap contract. And the next 4 years are very moderate price, where if Puka were to go to the open market, he would get 13, 14, 15, who knows, maybe 18, 20 mil. Who knows what the open market pays here, but you would give that rights retaining GM a discount for a long-term player, a player
Yeah.
again that would probably deserves more, Blaine.
Yeah. No, you're exactly right. One of the other things I wanted to kind of highlight about this change, I want to ask your opinion on it.
Mhm.
So the other main difference is now with the rule the way it is, we're just issuing a tender price, a tender. So just a first round tender or a second round tender. Whereas before we had to come up with that baseline price. What do you think about that difference and how that impacts things now?
Yeah, again, when we wrote the rule, I had initially written the way we had it in Legendary before, where you had to meet a baseline price, and the team that owned the RFA rights had to meet that initially by doing a contract offer, and then the other team would simply come in and just beat that offer, and you meet the baseline price. Well, we changed it because there were some controversies. People were getting upset because they'd never done it that way before. And then there was a formula that you had to follow to meet the baseline price. And people got confused. The formula was wrong, and we just simply swapped it. Where now the team that owns the RFA rights simply puts the tender, and the team coming in has to meet the baseline price as the first offer, and it kind of solved the problem, and it made the process a lot easier for everybody else. And that's how it was originally when RFA was originally broken. You did just put the RFA tender. It made sense. Boom, you slap this tag on, and then it's up to the other GM to figure out what they're going to offer and meet the baseline price. It's easier, it's better, it's the way it's supposed to be. We fixed a problem, a shortcoming that only lasted, I think, 2 years, I think, maybe 3 years in
Yeah.
some of these leagues.
Well, and the thing I really like about it, I said this already, but when you just are issuing a tender, you actually get to see what the market value is
Yeah.
a little bit because you get to see what teams are willing to bid. And,
Hmm.
you get to see what your options are. Are
Yeah.
you going to match that? Are you going to take the picks? So I really like that change to just offer the tender because I feel like it opens up things to see what the market value could be for that player.
Yeah, I think too, Blaine, the other issue with the extension is that the RFA rights team gets to determine the baseline because they control the tender. I know me, I'm going to just be honest with you. I don't always tender my players at what I believe they're worth. I will come in lower oftentimes because maybe I can't afford a bunch of RFAs, and I'll happily take a lower pick, knowing that there's a higher potential that an offer is going to come in there, right? I do that often. Listen, I did this last year with Quentin Lake, or no, I think a better example is Nick Cross, right? Nick Cross, great safety, finished first a couple years ago among safety. I think he finished second last year in one league. There was one team that put like I don't know, first and second round tender on him, which I thought was high, my opinion, high for safety. I put, I think, a third round tender on him, knowing that if the offer came in, I'll see what the offer is, right?
Mhm.
I would match or I would take the pick. An offer came in at 4.1 million in a $100 million league, and I matched it. I thought that was okay. The extension in the league is $4 million, $4.1 million offer. That's fair. I kept the player. He's a great player. But my point is that the baseline is already being established for this player by the tendering team. I established a low price for Nick Cross. And so this team came in, put a 4-year offer, but I screwed Nick Cross as a player because he deserved a second or maybe a first. And in another league, like I said, it was a first and a second, but I put a third round tender. I'm saying, you know what? I'm not going to pay a safety. I could find safeties on the cheap, is what I can do. And I under tendered him. And in this
Yeah.
league, he went for, again, 4.1. That's basically 4% of league value. Where in another league, he's 14%. So my point is, this is my bigger point is that a player, okay, let's say it comes in with only a 2-year offer, but the RFA rights team playing the money game is tendering him at a lower price. Is establishing a lower base price for what this player could get in UFA. That's why the other problem I have with this extension is Nick Cross deserved more money than what I offered him. I believe he did at least. And I kept him because I lowered the value of that contract offer and I matched it. I matched it at the end of the day, and Nick Cross is on my squad now for 4 years at a price that I established that I was comfortable with. Rather, if he would have went to free agency in this league, safeties get 5 and 6 and $7 million. And that's the other thing is that these players should have better representation, Blaine. And in
Yeah.
this case, if Nick Cross were to go to free agency, as we saw in another league we're in right now, he just went for $10 million in their league. Now, $200 million league, don't get me wrong, but he was the highest safety that got, a free agent contract right now. But I lowballed him in another league, and I got a steal on him, and I kind of screwed him out a bunch of money.
Yeah. Well, and that kind of highlights, you know, why we don't want to add that extension thing because
Yeah,
one of the strategies for some people in RFA, you kind of touched on it, is you can offer a lower tender if you feel like that will entice people to bid on him and then you could maybe get a pick out of it, right?
right.
So in theory, you're already kind of screwing the player over because
Yeah,
you're offering a lower tender. So why should we be able to also
extend it
extend
at, yeah.
and
Yeah,
and screw
exactly.
it over twice? Like
Yeah. And
the
I was,
benefit of RFA is that you have the option to
yeah,
match the offer or take a pick, which is
exactly. That's
what
how,
separates it from UFA, and that's what we're
mhm.
trying to stick to.
Yeah, because I know I don't always under tender my players, but I often do to create that lower base price. And then I let other GMs dictate what their price is. And I'll say, well, okay, I think this is worth it. It's not worth it, but that player would get more money in free agency. That's why the extension to me is wrong, because if you've established a lower price base price and now you can extend them at that cheap price, that player's screwed. He has no representation. And I think for me, at least the way it works in my mind, Blaine, is either match it or you take the pick. It's a limited protection that the RFA rights team has.
Yeah, I agree.
Yeah.
Real quick, I just want to point out too, we're not trying to bag on legacy or anything with this rule. It's just
No, I know.
something that was in there that
Well, listen, I'll be honest with you. Okay. I'll be honest with you. Like I said, I think I have 8 or 9 RFA tenders. I'm
yeah,
extending everybody since that's the rule. I got
yeah.
to be honest with you, man. So it's there. Do I think
Now everybody's going to offer your guys 4-year deals, so
there
you
you go,
can't.
right? Because it's out in the open. I get it. I know. Man, I got to give me up to 9 extra extensions. Sure, absolutely, man. So I think RFA is a wonderful part of these leagues. There's a strategy behind it,
Yeah,
again, what we always try to do, like when I was the commissioner over at Legacy, it's like I told you before, we try and create a complicated puzzle how to manage these teams where there's real choices, difficult choices to make. How are you going to build your team? And RFA is part of that, right? It's
yeah,
part of that. So a guy like me, for example, I draft a lot and I do well in the second, third, or fourth rounds. I always have a lot of RFAs, and for me, that RFA game, it's a puzzle. What I'm going to tender players at, which ones I'm going to match, and which ones I'm going to let go. Um, and you could argue too that one of the advantages could be, Blaine, that if you put if a team comes in and does only a 2-year offer, you're putting that team that has the RFA rights under a lot of pressure, right?
yeah,
Let's say, for example, again, Puka Nakua, somebody comes in, does a 2-year offer, for example, or even a 1-year offer. Let's go straight. Let's say somebody comes in at I don't know, first and second round tender, let's say it comes in 1 year, $12 million. Well, that puts the pressure on our RFA rights team. What do you do? Because you got a situation now. Do I take Puka for 1 year or do I take the first and second round tender? Right.
Yeah.
Now, now, is it worth it for that other team to give up a first and second round tender? Because 11 million, you extend him, it's going to be 16, 17 mil, whatever the rule is in that league. And Puka will be very expensive without a doubt. But you could undercut that team. You could. And then you put the ball, I guess, on his side of the court to decide what he wants to do. Somebody could do that without a doubt.
Yeah,
Um,
I was going to say, the teams that offer like a 2 or 3 year deal, sometimes it could benefit them because they can use their extension on that player the next year.
yeah, yeah,
And
they
so
could.
then they can end up keeping them longer. I mean, they
Yeah,
still have to give up their picks, but
yeah. It just depends on the extension rule and how it's worded. I think in a
yeah,
league like Legacy and Legendary, a player like Puka, for example, he'd be 150% of the last year of his contract, right? So,
yeah. So it would depend on how much that contract was.
right. So, and Legacy is now like $120 million league, I think. And so,
Yeah, I believe so.
with so somebody comes in and does a first, it says offers a 1 year contract, right? For example, at $12 million. Well, it would be 150% of that, so it would be $18 million to extend Puka. It's pretty fair. I think Puka would go. I don't know if he'd go for 18 million, but it'd be close enough to 18 million. I think he'd probably be in a $120 million league, a 15 to $18 million player. It's pretty fair. I mean, listen,
Yeah,
I'll be honest. The rule isn't perfect. When I created the rule, I just tried to save it and be as close to market value on some of these players and positions as we could. So we just didn't abolish it. I mean, listen, you could add, like I said, we could take out the RFA rule, add a bunch of extensions, and it solves the problem, and you got no controversy. I just
yeah,
think there's something fun about RFA, and it's not a perfect rule, but we're doing our best to maintain a relatively good rule. It's worked very well over the years. No, not perfect, but it adds that element of dimension where tough decisions need to be made. And I think this thing with, not adding extensions to RFA players, it makes that decision even harder on both the RFA rights team and the team offering picks for that player.
yeah. And as an example of what you said, you could get rid of RFA and add more extensions. That's what I did when I created Real NFL.
Yes, that's right.
I didn't put in RFA, but I added two more extensions. So we have four extensions in that league, but no RFA. So
Yeah.
in theory, you get to keep two more players than you would be able to keep if we or I mean that kind of replaces RFA.
Okay.
We got rid of RFA, but we added two more extensions. So in
Okay.
legendary, we have RFA, so we still only have two extensions.
Right. So, okay, let's play devil's advocate. Let's look at it from the other perspective for a minute, okay?
Yeah.
Let's say, for example, again, I got Puka Nakua. Um, first and second round tenor I'm going to put on him. Well, let me give a legendary example. I think that'd be better. I think people would understand it better. I had Puka last year. I forgot what the
You
first.
got Byron Young this year, don't
I
you?
got Byron Young, right? I got Byron Young. Well, I put a second round tender on him, right? I'm going to see what people offer and then I'll decide what I do with that. But what if somebody did come in with a 2 year offer, right? Let's say, he lowballs it even, right? Let's say he comes in 2 years at around, I don't know, $10 million, which should be fair or something like that. But he only puts 2 years as an attempt to force me to make a tough decision, Blaine, right? Because now
Yeah.
I'm like, okay, what am I going to do here?
Let's say his pick is like the 232 pick.
Right. Yeah, exactly. I mean, you could force my hand if it's a 232. Listen, I'm giving my secrets away here to the whole league, right? And I got Byron Young. So, but I don't care. I don't mind that at all because I play this game all the time. But somebody could come in here, do an artificially low offer, right? Force
Yeah.
force my hand. Do I take it for 2 years or do I take the pick at this point? It's going to be a tough choice. Now, is that fair to me? That's the question, Blaine. Because my hand is being forced on a low bid.
That is true. What I would say though,
Mhm.
if we compare it to UFA, okay,
Mhm.
UFA, say Byron Young's a free agent, somebody goes in, bids 2 years at 10 million. If you go in there, you have to beat that bid and then you're the leader. But there's nobody can protect Byron Young. There's no team out there that can protect him.
Yeah.
He's
Yeah.
just for open bidding. So in RFA, you have his rights. So even though they're giving you a tough decision, you still get something out of it. You get
Yeah.
the 232 if you let him go.
Right.
Whereas if you lose him to free agency, you get nothing.
Sure. Sure.
That's
Exactly.
that's that's the difference, in my opinion, of what
Yeah.
we have with RFA is you get something
Yeah.
regardless.
Yeah. And that's the tough part for the RFA rights team. And I understand why people want to extend these players after they re-sign them. But
Yeah,
again, if I established an artificially, if I believe that, right, Byron Young is worth a first round tender, I put a second round tender in there. I've already established a low baseline. So I'm already screwing myself by playing with the numbers, right? That's the other
yeah,
thing you got to remember. And so if I lose Byron Young because I under tendered him, that's my fault. That's my fault, right, Blaine?
yep. I mean, yeah, that's a good point. If you don't want to lose him, maybe you tender him a little higher. Maybe you
Yeah,
go to a first round tender.
that's right.
The contract may end up being a little more, but chances are you
Yeah.
can give him a
And,
4-year offer and you'll
right.
keep him.
And that's why, like I said, in one league, I think it was legendary. Somebody put a first and second round tender on Nick Cross, which I was like, whoa, that's crazy for a safety. But that's just my opinion. That could have been the right choice in legendary. It's a different league. And again, over in Dynasty, where I had him, I put a third round tender, took a chance. He did get an offer. It was a low offer. I was able to match. It worked out for me in that situation.
Yeah,
But if somebody would have came in and say at $6 million or $7 million and really wanted him, that's a tough choice. Do I want to give 6, 7% of my cap to a safety, or do I take a third round pick because I under tendered him? See, it's a puzzle, and that we're trying to make tough choices here and make it difficult, and sort of the game and the battle between the minds of different GMs and how they're dealing with one another. You know?
yeah. Yeah, and I mean, correct me if I'm wrong, but not real NFL or league, but real life NFL teams, if a player goes to RFA, I can't remember who it was, but it seems like just a year or two ago, there was a situation kind of like that. A team offered a player like a 2-year with like a really high price contract,
Yeah,
and the other team had to decide, am I going to match that offer
yeah,
or not? And that's in my opinion, that's the point of RFA. Like it gives the bidding team an opportunity to put you in a tough choice.
yeah.
But
That's what it is. Mhm.
at the end of the day, you still get something out of it. You get a draft
Right.
pick.
Right. And that was my thinking with Nick Cross. I got him for 3 years. He played great for me, I think 2 out of those 3 years. And I'm like, I'm not going to overpay him. The decision I made, right? I'm not going to overpay him, right? If I get a low offer that I can match, I'll match it. If the offer comes in high, I use them for 3 years and I'll still get a third out of it. So that's the way I look at it because I think I drafted him in the third round 3 years earlier. So to use him for
Yeah,
3 years and still get a third rounder back, it still would have been a sweet deal for me. But I was
yeah,
fortunate that a lower offer came in that I was willing to match. And again, this is the game that we play. And I could be wrong on this, Blaine, but in my mind, like I've said, all the leagues I've ever been in is there's never been an extension. It's either match or take the pick. I think there's a reason for that.
yeah. And just to highlight something that you just said, you do get that player for 3 years before they hit RFA.
Yeah,
So you've been able to use this player for 3 years,
yeah,
and now you have a decision. Do you match the offer? Do you take the pick? I mean, to me, it's you still get something, so it's kind of a win-win, right?
yeah, it is.
Either you match them or you free up the salary and you get a pick out of it.
Yeah, yeah,
And that's what I think people need to recognize with RFA. You own the rights to the player, and what that means is you have the opportunity to match the offer or take the pick.
yeah. Sounds about right to me. I mean, I understand where people are coming from, and I respect it. I kind of get the idea that, well, if you know they've owned this player, they have their RFA rights, And if they were deciding a contract for him, they would sign him for 4 years, not 2 years, because that player's worthy of a 4-year contract. But like I said before, this is RFA, not UFA. And so there's other factors involved because, yeah, I think if a good young player like a Nick Cross were to get to UFA, what would be the contract? Would he get more in UFA versus RFA? Generally speaking, yes, I believe he would, and that's how I side on the issue. So,
Yeah.
right, all
Yep.
right.
I
Mhm.
think you're right on the money there.
All right. Well, maybe I know somebody's going to disagree with me, so so
No,
yeah, I
that's how
guess
it goes.
I
But
know.
ultimately, we got to come up with what's we feel is best for the league. And I think
Sure.
this system is proven. Just to point out real quick, Dynasty uses this same system for people that are in that league.
Yeah.
Legacy is pretty much the same. They have that extra feature added in. Trying to think of what other leagues. Maybe that's it. I can't remember if All Pro has the same system or not. I think they might.
Yeah,
But
they've adopted it. I don't know if he changed it. They had the thing where the RFA rights team had to offer the contract. I don't know if Al changed it or not, but yeah, everybody adopted it from Legacy after I put it in there because it made the most sense after
Yeah,
that. I
that's
mean,
the thing is,
yeah,
when everybody takes on a rule, there's something good about it.
yeah,
Another rule that we had that was like that was the sniping rule that Anthony came up with.
yeah,
Every league has
yeah.
that.
Mhm.
That's when it's a good rule. When
Yeah,
when
that was a great
leagues
rule by
adopt it.
Anthony. That was a great rule by Anthony, to be honest with you. I really like that. Um, there's a bunch of rules we've created over the years I think are great. Some of them, I'm not crazy about. I'm not gonna lie to you. I'm not gonna mention any names here. But this is my rule. I don't run any more leagues right now because of health issues. And whatever commissioners decide what's best for their league, I play along with it, right? I may disagree with it, but I respect the notion that commissioners, they pay for the league usually, and they put a lot of hard work in, and whatever it is they decide, I roll with it and I respect it. And like I said, if I'm going to get 9 extensions in legacy this year, so be it. I'll utilize it.
There you go. I may as well.
Yeah, right. All right, buddy. Good chat, good talk. Exciting
Thanks for doing
times.
this with me.
Absolutely, man. Absolutely. So, all right, ladies and gentlemen, Legendary NFL Live. I'm Frank, GM of the Dolphins. And of course, I'm here with the commish, who's the GM of the Cardinals, talking some RFA rules. And I'm sure we'll be back soon to address some other issues. I want to thank you for joining me. Again, I want to thank the commish, Blaine. This is Frank signing off for Legendary NFL Live. Good night, everybody.